Hey everybody, I'm James Kotecki, and I am on location today in what is apparently the Great American West. I'm here today to interview the former governor of Arkansas and Republican presidential candidate, Mike Huckabee. So here we are with Governor Mike Huckabee. Thank you so much for agreeing to join me.
You're quite welcome, James. Glad to be with you.
And let's just get right to it because we don't have a lot of time. The debates last night, you expressed some disappointment with the format of the debates. What's the one thing that you really wanted to say during the debates that you didn't get to talk about, and we'll talk about it now?
I wanted to talk about the fair tax. I wanted to talk about getting rid of a tax system that's really hurting Americans, hurting American families and jobs and businesses, and replacing it with something completely designed to be flatter, fairer, finite, and family friendly. I wanted to talk about education. You know, it's frustrating. We've been in 3 debates now, 3 debates, and not one time has a question been raised about education, and yet it's one of the most important topics that people are talking about when they're raising their families. Now the dropout rate's 30%, and in addition to the ones that are dropping out, you also have to factor in there are a lot of kids who are putting their heads on their desk and taking a very expensive nap at the expense of taxpayers, billions of dollars being spent, and it's not because these kids are dumb, they're bored. We've made a big mistake by taking music and art out of the curriculum of our schools.
What kind of reforms would you make? Would they be focused more on the state level, or what is the federal government's proper role in education?
Really, as a cheerleader, the education is the role and the responsibility of states, and I'm a big 10th Amendment guy. If there's anything I'm kind of frustrated with, is that this city, Washington, D.C., has forgotten we have a 10th Amendment. They seem to have forgotten that Thomas Jefferson won this battle with Alexander Hamilton over whether we should have a strong centralized federal government and weak states, or very strong states and a relatively weak centralized federal government.
Let's talk about another issue that the Founding Fathers raised, which was the issue of religion and government. Thomas Jefferson phrased it, not in the Constitution obviously, but in one of his letters, as the separation of church and state.
Sure.
I think you're such an interesting candidate because you are an ordained Baptist, you're
Right.
an ordained
That's
Baptist
great.
minister.
Right.
You served Baptist congregations for a number of years.
Right.
And I think I can see how that would play very well to the Republican base and probably Southern Republicans in Arkansas. Are you afraid that when you look at a national election, people might have some hesitancy about that because you are essentially the embodiment of church and state together in one person?
Well, no, I don't think people would. I mean, they might if I hadn't been a governor for 10.5 years and had a long record of working on education and healthcare and road building. And I don't think people would probably feel the same way if, let's say, I'd gone directly from being a pastor and running for president. I'm sure people say, well, but what have you done in government that lets us understand that you understand what that job is about?
And speaking of your background, let's talk about foreign policy. You were a governor for 10.5 years, and then a governor for 3. But what qualifies you to run and to shape the foreign policy of this country as opposed to other candidates who may actually have more direct foreign policy experience?
Well, a couple of things that some people may not realize is that governors deal with foreign governments in the issues of trade and cultural exchange. So it's not like we're devoid. I mean, I've been to over probably 40 countries, I think, something like that, in the course of my life. Not all of them as governor, but certainly did a lot of international work as a governor. But I would say perhaps even more importantly, good foreign relations are really about one's character and judgment and capacity to work with human beings.
And now let's talk about healthcare. You've got a great personal story. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, just briefly, so people know what that is, but also extending that out. How do you take that personal experience and create a better healthcare system for all Americans?
Well, 5 years ago, my doctor told me if I didn't change a lifestyle that I was living, which was overeating, under-exercising, that I would be entering the last decade of my life. And that really got my attention. I decided I didn't want that as my exit strategy, so I made some serious lifestyle changes, gave up fried foods and sugary things, and instead began to exercise and eat good, wholesome, whole foods. Over the course of about a year, a little more, I lost 110 pounds. I came also to realize that my own personal experience was really similar to that of millions of Americans who were indulging themselves in bad health habits. And the result was not only that they didn't look good and feel good, the real problem was the cost is just staggering. I'd lead this country to a change of culture from a disease culture to a health culture. It's not really going to be able to be sustainable until we start focusing on wellness and prevention.
Our time is up, so thank you very much, Governor Huckabee.
Thank you, James.
I truly appreciate the opportunity to sit down, and I have this for you.
Okay.
This is a pencil puppet that I made of you. I make videos about all the candidates, and this is the one I hold up when I talk about you. So I want you to have it as a memento of this interview.
There we go. There's the pencil puppet.
There you go, Governor Mike Huckabee, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.